Shabbat Shalom. One of the great privileges of the rabbinate is interacting with young people. I go out of my way to engage our B'nai Mitzvah students over many weeks. I tell them that we'll be working on their Divrei Torah together, which is true, but frankly, I also have ulterior motives. I want them to spend as much time with me as I can possibly squeeze out of them. They're always respectful, and some, I hope, even appreciative of our time together. But I don't delude myself that they would come and see me, that they would consider it worth their while if I didn't require it. So I require it. And I do not feel guilty about it. I want to get to know them. And if I engage in a bit of manipulation, so be it. I'd like to continue to interact with them after their B'nai Mitzvah. Alas, most students and their parents, especially their parents, don't see it that way. For them, Bar Mitzvah Day plus 1 day, BMD plus 1 equals LD, Liberation Day. Present company excluded, of course. We're working hard in putting in place a unique, ambitious, comprehensive Stephen Wise Teen Initiative that we hope will attract hundreds of New York teenagers. As we speak, we are in the midst of a nationwide search for the best, most charismatic senior professional who will direct the program and join our senior staff, and I see some of the members of our lay search committee here as well. Our goal is to open the doors in the autumn of 2015. We have funding in place for 3 years due to the generous contributions of our own members, and in the course of time, we will be raising much more money from you. You don't even know that yet. And from the Jewish community at large. I feel strongly about this. How can we abandon our teens precisely at the moment in their lives when they are most open to learning about their place in the world and most eager to explore the values that will animate the rest of their lives? How can we delegate that task to instill Jewish values to secular high schools? What nonsense is that? Is it any wonder that our teenagers' Jewish connection atrophies and their Jewish identity weakens? Is it any wonder that when they arrive at university, they are so overwhelmed by opponents of Israel that they don't even have a clue how to respond? What else did we expect? If we stopped learning math at age 13, would we be proficient in math? If we stopped reading at age 13, would we know how to read as adults? If we stopped exercising at age 13, wouldn't we expect our muscles to atrophy? I've heard all the skepticism about Jewish teenagers' engagement and all the reasons not to do it. I don't care. We're going to do it anyway. If we had listened to all those who advised us that it couldn't be done, nothing would have happened here at Stephen Wise, including, by the way, this Kabbalat Shabbat service. It is common nowadays to dump on millennials and Gen Y. They can't focus on any one thing. They're addicted to screens. They are shallow, uneducated, adrift, celebrity obsessed. I don't agree. At least with respect to our teens, the ones I see all the time, every day. Actually, the opposite. They are amazing people, smarter than we are, much more tolerant, much more open to diversity, much more accepting of differences. They inspire me. I do, however, worry about our teenagers, Jewishly, of course, but also generally. With all the incredible education they receive, and New York schools really are magnificent, I worry that we teach and they learn technical proficiency at the expense of understanding. I worry that we look at school at every level, from early childhood through high school and university as well, as primarily or even exclusively vehicles for social advancement and mobility, the pathway to high-paying jobs. We expect our youth to perform and to excel as technicians. And by and large, at some point in their childhood or their youth, most of them accept this challenge, and they realize that to excel requires a disciplined will and almost all of their time. This is one of the reasons of the skepticism that I hear. New York City's teenagers don't have the time for anything Jewish because their entire day is filled with all of the stuff that will put them on the path to American-style success. And this is what their parents want for them as well. Who has time for Judaism when we are in this ferociously competitive race to the top? I worry that this type of single-minded educational focus deprives our children of the potential to live full, meaningful, and joyful lives. This overbearing focus on skills narrows the soul and corrodes the arteries of meaning. There really is no time left for exploration and reflection. I'm not necessarily blaming the schools. First, New York City schools, both private and public, are tremendous educational institutions, and second, they reflect what we ourselves demand of them. But as a society and as a Jewish community, we must encourage our kids to carve out space for and devote time to the really important things of life. Not only mathematical calculus, but moral calculus. Not only the science of the body, but also the serenity of the soul. These are as important, perhaps more important, even for American-style success, than degrees. The purpose of education should be not only knowledge of the universe, but knowledge of the self. To instill in our youth an understanding not only of how to take care of themselves, but also how to take care of others, to help others, to relate to others, to recognize our dependency on others is a key skill, the knowledge of which is an essential component of self-fulfillment. We feel useful if we are useful to others. How many of us are dissatisfied as adults? We may be the greatest, highest paid technicians in the world, but we are still dissatisfied because we feel we're not making a difference. Often, the feeling that we are making a difference is what makes all the difference. Our children do not have the time. They are too busy acquiring information to realize that multiple meanings are often as important as multiple choice. That you may answer all the questions right about what is, but have no clue about what ought to be. And it is our sense of what ought to be that makes us who we are. We tend to reduce education to its narrowest and most utilitarian function, but utility is only one form of knowledge and not usually enough. We need to empower our children. not only with what they know, but to instill humility and acceptance about what they will never know. Jean Guénon, the mid-20th century political and cultural critic, a teacher of higher learning to France's finest students, and a fierce and courageous critic of the Nazis and their French collaborators, wrote what is perhaps the definitive diary of France under Nazi occupation. It has only recently been translated into English. I highly recommend reading it. Describing his disgust and loathing of a docile France, so willing to be enslaved, he wrote, "Never have so many people in Europe known how to read, and yet never have there been so many herd animals, so many sheep. A man today is utterly unprotected from his vanity. A degree certifies his knowledge. He believes in it. He's proud of it. Something is true as soon as he has read it. The truth is in books, isn't it? He doesn't realize that the lie is in them too. Our teaching is far too much about results," writes Guénon. "All too often it fosters the gift of pedantry and a docile memory. 100 young people I talk to are far more knowledgeable in geometry than Euclid, but few of them are able to reflect that Euclid was a great geometer, and they are nothing. More than the results of the sciences, we should teach their history, to get young minds to understand that a scientist is not a man who knows, but a man who seeks, crushed and exalted all at the same time by the idea of all that he does not know. Thus, we could produce independent, strong citizens and not vain, servile animals." In this week's Torah portion, Chayei Sarah, we read the following tantalizing verse. "Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh lifnot erev." And towards evening, Isaac went out into the field, lasuach. No one really knows what that word, lasuach, means. But many commentators understood it to mean to pray, to meditate, to contemplate. Whatever he did there involved deep reflection and deep thinking. So the verse is usually translated as something like, in the gloaming, at sundown, at the end of the day, Isaac went out into the field to think deeply. It's a beautiful vision if you can capture that in your head. After all the hard work of the day, the learning, the attention to detail, the disciplined life, towards sundown, out in the fields, Isaac was thinking deeply about life. Abraham had sent his senior servant Eliezer to find a wife for Isaac and had not yet returned. The Torah tells us that while he was reflecting, he saw Eliezer's caravan, and then he saw Rebekah, and there, in the gloaming, at eventide, at end of day, Isaac fell in love with her. Love is not a function of utility either. Love is the one component of life that most of us say we want more than anything else. To love and to be loved is the consequence of lasuach. It's the consequence and the function of reflection. It happens in the gloaming. After the day of the textbook learning is over. It happens when we have the time to learn more about ourselves, our purpose, and our reasons for being. Somehow we must make time for our youth lasuach, to roam, to think, to explore, to reflect, to meditate deeply on the essence of things after the hard work of the day at school at the end of day, in the gloaming, at the set of sun. If you sit down at set of sun and count the acts that you have done, and counting find one self-denying deed, one word that caused the heart of him who heard, one glance most kind that fell like sunshine where it went, then you may count that day well spent. But if through all the livelong day you've cheered no heart by yea or nay, if through it all you've nothing done that you can trace that brought the sunshine to one face, no act most small that helped some soul and nothing cost, then count that day as worse than lost. Amen.